Hi, I'm Emma, and I'm going to be a junior next year at Kent Place. I'm 15. Personally for me, because I'm not sure if I can speak for anyone else, but for me, the factors that change my identity are the people who I'm around, and not necessarily big moments or life-changing seconds in my life that make me feel a certain way, but how I interpret different moments and how long I hang on to them, because anything can be life-changing if I choose to hang on to it for a long time, especially if, like, you read all those books where someone was like, oh, and in that moment I realized. But I've been doing a lot of thinking and I realized that maybe it's not that moment, but how I interpret that moment afterwards, because something can be so life-changing and we're going to learn a lot of lessons, but the main lesson that we hold on to for the rest of our life is probably going to be the one that we choose to go back on and choose to keep thinking about. I don't necessarily feel like there's a certain criteria that needs to be established for a safe space, and I feel like it's subjective to every single person, but a lot of factors that I'm realizing sort of play into whether or not I feel safe in sharing parts of myself are the fact that people need to necessarily not pretend that they care a lot, but show that they're sort of open to a lot of different factors of identity and not always looking for a greater sense of understanding, because I'm realizing that a lot of the places that I choose not to share certain things are because if I share them, people keep asking why. Like, why do you feel that way? Why do you feel the need to share this? Like, a lot of certain, not safe spaces are just because people keep asking why. And you don't need to provide answers to that. I think it comes from both sides of this whole supportive, unsupportive environment thing, where sometimes you feel like people are just pushing things under the rug, but other times it seems like a lot of steps are being taken, but they're all just to show that steps have been taken, and there's no real sort of depth to the steps, and they're not actually going to do anything. And then the other part is that if you share certain things, a lot of people will be like, why do you need to share this? Like, if there's a speaker, they'll be like, why did we need to talk about that? Well, why didn't we need to talk about that? Like, we should feel a certain openness to talk about everything, and I feel like microaggressions can manifest really easily when we do keep asking, why do we need to talk about this? Well, if someone feels the need to, they don't necessarily have to have a reason, especially if it's a part of their identity. I think that also depends on the environment, because if it's in an environment that hasn't been dealing with these up front, or one that sort of chooses to push down certain parts of my identity, I may just push down those microaggressions and internalize them. But I feel like personally I'm not someone who is afraid to call people out on certain things, not in a bad way, but in a way that is healthy for growth for both of the people involved, or more. But I think it's important for me as a person to acknowledge when it's respectful to call people out, or when respect is outweighed by something else and some other factor that I need to acknowledge, especially if it's pertinent to myself and how I identify. So I think dealing with a lot of things comes from sort of what exactly you prioritize and where you come from in your own sort of background in your life, and how you may have triggers for different things. So I mean, personally, I'm realizing that taking time for myself is not always the right thing to do, and that can make me internalize a lot more things. But finding a smaller safe space that I feel like I can talk to, or people can talk to me, especially hearing the stories from other people, is very important, because if I just keep thinking about what I've been through, what maybe other people have said to me, what other people have thought about me, that's not necessarily something that's helpful for my growth, because I need to realize that there's more than one player in my life, and it's not just people talking at me and then me internalizing it. So I think digesting something comes from finding a good safe space to grow from it and to hear other people. In terms of finding a good balance so that you yourself aren't overwhelmed, it's hard, because I think in a way it takes being overwhelmed to a point to realize where your line is. So I'm not saying you should have a panic attack for you to realize where you need people to stop, But in terms of finding your own space for mental health, it's hard to like do it without establishing the lines and boundaries that you need, because I think being uncomfortable is a very important part of growth. So dealing with a lot of things while keeping in mind your mental health is finding out at what point being uncomfortable has crossed the line into something more dangerous. And for me personally, that's definitely sort of not realizing that not everything on social media or everything that I see is going to be directed at me or directly impacting me. So like if I swipe up on someone's story and they don't have the same opinion as me, or if someone's response to my story isn't the same exact opinion as me, it's not a personal attack, but it's also not something that I need to lose a lot of sleep over. So I guess finding out whose opinions really matter to you and finding out how to digest contrasting opinions, because it's also important to gain empathy for those who don't share your views.